Hello, everyone, and welcome back to me, Shiva Wilson, and my channel LCUK, which, as you know, stands for Legalised Cannabis United Kingdom. Now, today we're joined on the show with Cormac O'Loughlin from CRAN, which is a cannabis activist group based in Ireland. So I've got a little interview set up for you today. We're going to have 10 questions and maybe a little bit of a chat afterwards in a bit more loose format. But so, Cormac, how are you doing? Welcome to the show. Welcome to LCUK.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. All good.
That's all right. Yeah, good. So, starting off, I just want to cancel the cannabis equation. So, tell me a little bit about yourself that's got nothing to do with cannabis, just to introduce
Uh,
yourself.
well, I'm a systems engineer, essentially, an IT specialist. 25 years working that kind of work, doing Linux integrations, things like that. It's so that's my career essentially, but that's where I'm at.
So, obviously, I'm a cannabis channel. We're going to be talking about cannabis
Yep.
on the show here today. So, what was your first interaction with or knowledge of cannabis?
Well, I guess like a lot of people, I was exposed to it during my school days, so
Mm.
that's where I would have initially been. That's where I would have initially been made aware of it, got to know it, even tried it during secondary school.
Yeah.
So not a whole lot different to many other people.
Do you know how old you were at the time?
Probably around 16 at the time.
And what was that like the first time you actually tried it or
Yeah, it
came
was.
into contact with it?
Yeah, with some friends outside of school hours, we would have gone and hung out a little, and it was being passed around, and I partook, basically.
Yeah. Do you actually remember the first time you took it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It,
And what happened?
well, it was in a kind of a party situation. We had drinks and all sorts of other things happening, but yeah, that was available, that was around, and I tried it at that point. It probably wasn't the greatest of ideas mixing alcohol and cannabis at the same time, but luckily at that point anyway, there was no negative consequences.
Yeah. Do you remember the feeling of it that first time?
Yeah, well, it's very standard. It was
Mm.
relaxing, it was giggly, it was fun. So
Mm.
that's my memory of it at least.
So it's a first good experience, you'd say.
Yeah,
No
for sure.
paranoia, anxiety, anything like that. Some
No,
people, when their first time, don't enjoy it.
no, I enjoyed it that time as well.
Good stuff. So, did you have any drug education at school or from friends when you were at that age?
Yeah, there was the usual say no to drugs, and they had different things. They were trying to convince everybody that you take one puff and you're an addict for life, and trying to
Mm.
make people aware of different drugs and what effects they would have. I I don't think it was very effective, and I don't think it was very honest. To be
Yeah.
fair. And it's when it's not honest, when it's just fear mongering, I really feel that as soon as I would try something, then all the fear mongering disappears, because it just makes out that the people who were teaching you or trying to teach you or trying to educate you on the subject were just lying. And if they're lying about
Mm.
one substance, they might be lying about everything else. So it breaks the trust, and it breaks the propaganda, I guess.
Yeah. So you went with your own experiences over the supposed knowledge pushed by these teachers and whatnot.
Well, exactly. When you're taught one thing, and then when another perspective is demonstrated and you have first-hand experience of the alternative, it's very hard to believe the propaganda or the education on most of the things when you know for a fact it's not true.
Mm. So you are a cannabis activist. Would you say that about yourself?
Yeah, I advocate
Yeah.
for for people who use drugs, essentially, not just cannabis, but
Yeah.
cannabis is one of the main drugs people use. It is
Mm.
the
Mm.
most popular drug, you might say. So,
The most popular drug worldwide as well, isn't it?
well, uh, any statistics I've seen say so. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like 220 something million people in the whole world use it at the moment, I read.
yeah, that's it. And here in Ireland, I think it's 80% of the illicit drugs that are used is people using
Mm.
cannabis. So that's it.
So what brought you into the activism side around cannabis and drugs as such?
Well, like I said,
What we do.
I didn't see the I don't see the harm in it when I tried it as a kid. I was I was surprised. I didn't know why if alcohol was legal and it had the negative effects, like the slowed reaction times, the aggression, the hangover. I didn't see why cannabis should be treated differently. I didn't see why something that doesn't have those negative effects would be illegal, whereas alcohol would be legal. So I started
Mm.
going on the marches, legalize it. I was still quite
Oh yeah.
quite green at the time. I still didn't know the ins and outs of the whole thing. I didn't know the reasoning for any of that, but the more you learn, But at that point, yeah, I was going on the marches. It didn't make a huge difference, and it's still, I don't know how much difference the marches make. But after that
Mm.
point, I did lose friends to drugs. So
Oh right.
it made me more open to actually seeing uh, what harms are being caused by the fact that drugs in general are illegal, illicit, prohibited. And
Yeah.
at that point, I started looking at other organizations to see what angles they were at, see why they were motivated, and I found my own thoughts, my own feelings aligned very much with the likes of. You're aware of Anyone's Child and Transform Drugs
Yeah.
Policy. There's
Hmm.
similar in Ireland with ISCA, the Irish word for water, essentially. But
Okay.
they so it's I became much more aware of the actual harms of prohibition itself rather than the harms of
Mm.
drugs. And the more you look at the harms of prohibition, the more it makes sense why drugs are so harmful in general. At
Right.
least that's my perspective on it.
Prohibition makes drugs more harmful.
Very
That
much.
kind of view.
Uh,
Yeah. So you were quite young when you first started going to marches and the activism started.
Yeah, I was marching by the time I was 18, I would guess. Yeah.
All right. So you've been at it for a long time then, by the look of your beard.
At this point, yeah, it's more than 20 years at this point.
Oh
So
wow.
things have
So
changed a
that's a
little
long
bit,
time.
but I think we're closer
So
today.
yeah, yeah, me too actually. So what is cran? Is that pronounced
Yeah,
correctly? Cran?
yeah,
Cran?
crown. It's an Irish word. Uh, if you travel in Ireland, you'll quickly realize there's a lot of accents. So there's a few different
Mm.
correct ways you might pronounce it, but crown it would be valid enough. Crown is a group basically. It's a voluntary organization. There's two sides of it. There's the organization which has a board. It does activism, it does advocacy, and we try to engage with politicians to try and
Mm.
basically move the needle on this subject. The other side of it is much more social. We grew from a Reddit subreddit, essentially.
Yeah.
So
Because
it's
cran
basically a
means
meeting
trees,
place
doesn't
and
it?
a social environment.
The cran means trees, right? Like UK
Trees, yeah,
trees.
exactly.
Reddit.
Like
Right.
like I said, we originally grew from the Reddit from a Reddit sub, and that was kind of the Irish version of trees. The
Yeah.
the cannabis subreddit essentially.
Yes. Okay. So what do they stand for, Cran? They do activism. What are you
Yeah,
trying to
we
achieve?
we advocate for, well, first of all, harm reduction as opposed to prohibition. I
Mm,
don't think there's a society on the planet that has ever had no drugs, completely clean cut, no drugs,
mm,
no alcohol, no nothing. So that's an impossible goal. We don't believe that's possible at all. What we can do is
mm,
make drug use less harmful. Uh,
mm,
with Crown itself, we focus almost primarily on cannabis as the
mm,
biggest used drug or the biggest illicit used drug,
mm.
uh, and we think it should be legalized. So that's where we would be pushing.
Okay. So, like, I think you've already covered this, but what are your operations? So you talk to politicians, and you've got the social side of it as well.
Well, that's it. We are a voluntary organization. If somebody wants to just sit around making memes, making fun of the government, that's okay. That's how they can contribute.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to update the website, that's again, it's a valid contribution. If somebody wants to try to contact their own representatives and try and have a chat with them and try and change their minds or even just make them aware of the other perspective. A lot of
Mm,
politicians I find are um, they're in this. I think it's Europe wide or maybe even worldwide where the politicians think it's the standard default practice to just say no, drugs are bad, ban all the drugs,
mm,
make them go
mm,
away, but it doesn't make them go away. So
mm.
uh, yeah, it's about trying to expose the politicians to other perspectives. If somebody wants to stand forward and do that with their own politicians, we would encourage that. But at the same time, if people are using drugs, very often they don't want to stand up and put their face out
Mm.
there and get outed as a drug user. So, as I said, it's a voluntary organization. If anybody wants to do these things, that's how we would try and help them, give them the real data, give them the real information that they can use to do that competently.
Hmm. So, how do you fit in with Cran, sorry, and what's your role
Well,
there?
I'm a volunteer, as I said. I do try to talk to my politicians, my representatives. I do try and make them aware, at least, of the other
Mm,
perspective. Make them aware that it's not a controversial thing at this. Well, it's controversial, but it's not a clear cut majority in favor of banning everything. It's not a clear cut
mm,
majority that want prohibition on everything. I think at this point there is almost or probably more than half of the population want reform in this area.
mm.
So the standard resort to prohibition or the tough on drugs stance, it's not flying anymore. I think it's not working for them
Mm.
anymore, and they're confused.
So, I was aware that there's been a citizens' assembly in Ireland and I don't know how to say
Yeah,
Oireachtas,
Oireachtas, yeah. There's a
Oireachtas
Well, it's not the
committee.
first one, but yeah, there was in 2022. Well, even a little bit further than that. In 2019, there was a working group on non-coercive sanctions or non-coercive ways to handle drug use.
Mm,
Um, it was chaired by a judge. The judge ended up writing a minority report that disagreed with the majority report. He
right.
said no, don't decriminalize, whereas the rest of the members of that committee said, yeah, we need to decriminalize, we need to handle this situation with compassion rather than
Mm,
criminal sanctions, essentially. After that, there was an Oireachtas committee in 2022, the Oireachtas Justice Committee, that basically settled on yes, we need to decriminalize, and in the case of cannabis, we probably should regulate. And
mm,
I don't think they specifically said legalize, but there should be there should be regulation for it rather than a straight out prohibition. In 2023, the Citizens' Assembly happened. Now, there's a lot of questions over that too. We believe the the scope of the Citizens' Assembly was very much restricted in that it only considered problematic drug use. So people who were
Right.
using cannabis for pain relief, people who were using cannabis and weren't addicted, people who were using any drugs and were not addicted, were not considered in the Citizens' Assembly.
Right.
So it was tampered with, and there are questions over it. But they, in the end, came out with 30 something recommendations, and they're good recommendations. They did say that decriminalization should be considered, and that's what the 2024 Oireachtas Committee, and indeed I think it's been reformed this year to continue discussing and to continue analysing if decriminalisation is the best way forward. We believe it is, essentially.
Yeah. So what's the situation like in Ireland with regard to cannabis reform at the moment?
Well, it's that we're trying to focus on these committees at the moment. There is still a lot of uh, legacy people, legacy politicians who have not been convinced by all the evidence presented so far. So if we could, we would influence them, but at the same time, their job is to consider the recommendations from the Citizens' Assembly. So I think their scope is rather limited as well at the moment. There have always been marches and smoke ups and this and that and the other in Ireland as long as as I said, I'm 20 odd years doing it now. And well, I don't think that'll change. Some years are bigger than others. There's sometimes people will find other ways to protest, to bring up this issue. It's not going away, basically. It's not a majority who'll stand up and speak on this subject, but I do think it's a majority at this point who are in agreement with us on this point.
So, like, because there's been an election in Ireland recently, right?
There has last November, yeah.
And did that mess around with the outcomes of the Citizens' Assembly and the Oireachtas Committee?
No. Before the election happened, the chair of that committee did put out an interim report. The interim report does recommend decriminalization. It also recommends legalization of cannabis in that it supported the findings of the 2022 committee. The reforming of that committee this year, there's a bit of a smell of trying to roll things back a little bit, from my perspective at least. There's been very little talk about it, and the people who were elected or placed on that committee this year, they don't have a great track record. At the same time, the election has lost us some advocates in the Dáil, in the Parliament. So
Right.
it's a difficult situation, but I don't think it's something they can roll back on entirely. Not with any credibility, at least.
And so there's a scheduled committee coming up, is there? With regards to
Well,
these?
it's already met. Yeah, the 2025 joint committee on drugs in Ireland. It was reformed in, I think, March or April. It was reformed, but it has already met. But they were private meetings. In September, I think the Dáil and the government is due to come back from their summer break, and there are scheduled public meetings. So that's when we'll
Right.
actually see what way things are leaning. But it's a little frustrating, I think.
So that's the one thing that characterizes Ireland differently from the UK, is that there's actually an active conversation going on around drugs at the moment. in your parliamentary bodies, whereas ours is extremely quiet and no one wants to take any mention of drugs at all. It's just recently we had the London Drugs Commission that was just battered off like it was a smelly fly or something, saying no, no, we're not going to legalise or decriminalise anything, just leave us alone.
Yeah,
And
well,
but in Ireland there is a discussion at least.
well, I must give some credit to the Green Party actually on that one. They over the years they have been supportive of reforms and specifically
Mm.
cannabis legalization. They have pushed a little bit here and there. When they got into government, the idea of legalization was thrown out. The main parties didn't want to hear it, like you're describing, batted away, saying nope,
Mm.
nope, nope. But the most recent time they were in government, in order to form a program for government, they insisted on the citizens' assembly. Essentially,
Ah,
they said that needs to be there. We will join your government. We will work with you, but that needs to be discussed. So when they insisted, they eventually got this citizens' assembly, and that's opened this conversation, I think. So it has done some good altogether. Now they've since left government. They weren't
right.
re-elected, so it's a conversation that's happening, but it's one that the original people who opened the conversation are no longer a part of. So it can be a bit
Right.
of a difficult one to speak on. Or
Mm.
that said, it isn't just them. It isn't just the Greens who were pushing for it. There are members in pretty much all the parties, I would think, at this point, who are open to the idea, who see the benefits of it, and hopefully they will carry the torch forward.
Yeah. So we've already covered this a bit, but about your actual vision or goals,
Hmm.
do you want the status quo, decriminalization, legalization, or some other outcome that we haven't spoke about yet?
Well, my preference would be to decriminalize all drugs. Uh,
Mhm.
in the case of the two friends I lost, one of them went to jail, lost a lot of weight being forced to go cold turkey. He had an addiction with heroin. He was caught
Mm.
with a small amount of heroin. He served 6 months. As I said, he was forced to go cold turkey. And when he came out of jail, he was told by his parents, no, you're not in my house. You have to go somewhere else. We don't want junkies in my house. So he went
Right.
somewhere else. The only other place he had to go was his friends who were also addicted to heroin. And he
Right.
overdosed a couple of days later. Another friend, he was at a party. He had taken some pills. He felt the pain.
Mm.
He should have called an ambulance, but he was still in
Mm.
possession, so he didn't want anything to do with an ambulance or whatever, and that's where he died as well. So in
Right.
one case, it was stigma that killed my first friend, and
Mm.
in the second case, it was fear of a prosecution that kept him from seeking help. In both of
Mm.
those cases would not exist outside of a prohibition. So in my own personal opinion, we need to decriminalize all drugs. Now,
Mm.
when it comes to cannabis, I believe there is not a sufficient reason to keep it illegal. And I
Mm.
think as a harm reduction approach, regulation would be much more fitting for cannabis. I'm not advocating for legalize heroin, legalize cocaine, legalize all the drugs, but I
Mm.
think we do need more common sense in how we're regulating a lot of them. Maybe they don't need legalized heroin, maybe they just need morphine assisted therapy. Maybe
Mm.
we don't need legalized cocaine, but maybe coca sweets, little boiled candies, might help some people get away from crack. It's
Mm.
it's a difficult situation, and I'm glad some places are having these conversations.
Cool, man. And so about CRAN again, how can people get involved with CRAN and support the work?
Well, as I say, we're a voluntary organization. We don't handle money. We don't get donations or anything like that. But if people want to contribute, they can join us on the Reddit. They can join us on the Discord. We have a website, cran.com, CRAINN.com. That's where we put up warnings. For example, the recent HHC ban. Everybody is well, the politicians are patting themselves on the back about that. The HSE has been warning about it since 2023, but the first notice we've had on Cron is dated 2022. We are the people on the ground in this case, and we do have warnings and such there. Really, for contributions, I would say, yeah, join the Discord, have a chat, see what way you want to donate or volunteer your time or your expertise.
Cool. So Discord, website, and Reddit are places for people to come and support Cran. So my last question is a bit about spirituality, because cannabis and also other drugs, like psychedelics, have been often linked to spiritual experiences, mystical awareness, things like that, or getting in touch with God. Of course, Rastafarians traditionally use weed to connect with Jah. So I like this idea. I feel like cannabis has helped me get in touch with spirituality in some ways. So do you believe in any form of spirituality or God or gods, and how does cannabis fit into that, if at all?
Well, that's a difficult question, but it's an interesting one at the same time. I'm not sure that I would be. I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not atheist. I definitely believe in something. You could call me agnostic, like I'm not sure. But at the same time, I do believe in the world. I do believe in nature. I do believe in the universe, and I think that's my God, essentially. The the world that bore us, the world that allowed us to develop and evolve, the universe that created the world. It's definitely there. I feel its present and its presence, and it's definitely alive. So I would say that's my God.
And how does weed come into the equation then?
Well, it's one part of the greater, isn't it? It's all one thing. Nature itself is amazing. It's hard to say, and I mean that's an argument a lot of religious people will use. How can you say that this is, random or completely without a creative touch? And it is difficult to say that this is a completely random world. This is a random organization of molecules. So I don't fully believe it is random, and also I don't fully believe that it is a conscious decision that it was created, but I can believe it is there, and it is amazing, and it does fill me with a sense of wonder, So when it comes to spirituality and that, I think that's kind of where I'm at. But if you were to name it, I don't think I could be atheist or agnostic. It's some weird mix.
So let's say someone presents you with God and you're sober, someone presents you with God and you're stoned. Does it make a difference to you?
No, I mean,
if God shows up, would you notice them any differently?
No, I think I don't know what to call them. That's the only thing. They're equally amazing, wonderful. You still feel the same things even if you don't know what to call it. A rose by any other name and all that.
So those are all my questions that I've had planned, but I just a couple of other ones coming to my head, like the typical Reddit question that I find in the UK trees thing is, how long do you think it's going to be before the UK legalizes cannabis? That's typical kind of prediction type of thing. So how long do you reckon it's going to be before Ireland decriminalizes drugs or legalizes cannabis? Any predictions along that timeline?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to say. I mean, the polls at the moment say that around 50%, a little more, a little less, are supportive of cannabis reform specifically. The polls also say that around 50%, a little more, a little less, support decriminalization of drugs, all drugs.
Mm.
I think the public is ahead of the politicians,
Mhm.
so it's a difficult one to guess. But I would be surprised if nothing changes in the next 5 years, and I would be
Yeah.
very surprised if cannabis was still illegal in 10.
Right.
That's
Okay. So
that.
you have a maximum
It's a
cut
guess.
off of 10.
It's a guess, but the way things are
Yeah.
moving, I think within 5 years it's going to be very obvious that the majority support reform. And
Mm.
I think our politicians, they pander a lot. They will do what they're told eventually when it's very obvious what the majority want.
And have you ever had any good responses from MPs or politicians with regard to your own activism?
Well, yeah, no, there's it's difficult to say what's good and what's bad. I would count any constructive engagement as good. And yes,
Mm.
there have been there's politicians that already support the idea of cannabis reform or
Mm.
drugs policy reform. That's one thing. So that's already positive, but I don't need to contact them if they're already supportive of that. The ones
Yeah.
that are technically against or are in a party that are against reforms or against legalization or against decriminalization, I would say the positive ones are where they say, okay, let's talk, let's sit down and meet and see if we can find some common ground. Let me hear your
Mm.
perspectives and let's talk about that. That's the most positive reform or responses I've seen. I think
Mm.
that's important. And it happens more than I would have expected actually to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, it's a situation where they are the people whose minds we need to change, and if they're open
Mm.
to having that conversation, that's half the battle already, you know.
Openness to
To
the
discuss it,
conversation.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Cormac, thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to say, either about yourself or Cran,
I
in
think
closing?
that's covers a good lot of it. Thanks for the time.
Oh man, yeah. Thank you for coming on the LCUK podcast that doesn't have a name as of yet, but I'll figure something out for it. Yeah, so Cormac O'Loughlin, thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
it's been a pleasure to have you and to have you discuss cannabis and drugs on the show. So, everyone who's watching, thanks very much for showing up. There will be more of these podcast interview type things on the LCUK channel. So, peace out, Stoner fam, and remember, LCUK, legalize cannabis, United Kingdom. Good night.